Practical Anarchy, A Guide to Self-Determination, Dickie Dredd. Section 79. Building Autonomy in Hostile Systems. Anarchist practice does not exist in a vacuum. It always unfolds in the shadow of states, corporations and systems of surveillance. In earlier section we stressed the importance of direct action and mutual aid. This section will examine how communities sustain autonomy under pressure. The challenge is not only to create alternatives, but to protect them from repression and co-option. Strategies against surveillance and repression. States deploy sophisticated tools, facial recognition, data scraping, predictive policing, to monitor dissent. Police powers expand constantly, justified through discourses of security or counter-terrorism. The repression of Occupy Wall Street, dismantling of protest camps at Standing Rock, the evictions of squats in London and Berlin, all demonstrate that autonomy invites hostility, precisely because it exposes alternatives. The UK provides stark evidence of this. The policing crime sentencing in Corn Sachs of 22 gave police sweeping powers to restrict protests deemed seriously disruptive, whilst the Public Order Act 23 added offences around locking on and expanded stop and search powers at demonstrations. Campaign groups such as Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil have been particular targets. Facial recognition trials in London used against Black Lives Matter marches raised further concerns about racialised policing and the erosion of anonymity in public space. These examples show how repression is not abstract but ongoing, and why anarchist autonomy must be resilient. Elsewhere, similar patterns unfold. In France, the riot police, the CRS, have repeatedly deployed kettling, tear gas and mass arrests against pension reform demonstrators and the Gilets jaunes movement, reinforcing the lesson that even modest social demands invite militarised responses. In China, the grid management system fuses facial recognition, phone monitoring and mandatory apps into an unprecedented surveillance net, with the repression of Hong Kong protests providing a vivid example of digital authoritarianism in action. In India, the Aadhaar biometric ID system has become compulsory for access to welfare and public services, raising concerns about exclusion, profiling and political misuse of personal data. These cases underline that repression is not unique to only one state, but a global strategy to contain autonomy. Yet surveillance is not only about cameras and algorithms. It's also about normalisation, the subtle embedding of control into everyday life through ID systems, financial monitoring and workplace discipline. Autonomy means resisting this creep as well, building cultures of dissent where obedience is not the default, and where everyday practices of resistance, from cash economies to informal care networks, blunt the reach of state oversight. Digital autonomy and its limits. Many groups experiment with digital counterpower, open source software, encrypted messaging and mesh networks that bypass corporate infrastructures. These tools mirror the logic of the commons, decentralised, participatory and resistant to enclosures. Examples include community-run internet services in Catalonia and the use of peer-to-peer networks during uprisings in Hong Kong. Yet these systems remain fragile, as surveillance capitalism adapts quickly to co-opt or undermine them. Digital autonomy, therefore, works best as part of a mixed strategy, a supplement to, not a replacement for, embodied solidarity. Low-tech resistance and resilience. Equally important, practices that reject dependence on hypertech altogether. Face-to-face assemblies, community print culture, physical notice boards and oral traditions cannot be hacked, surveilled or switched off at the whim of a platform. The clandestine presses of the 19th century radicals, the underground pamphlets of Soviet dissidents and the zines of punk counterculture all embody this principle. Low-tech communication carries its own kind of autonomy. Same applies to sustenance. Off-grid living and self-provisioning, already discussed earlier, embody low-tech resilience. Traveller encampments, eco-villages, permaculture projects and guerrilla gardens all demonstrate that people can sustain life with minimal reliance on state or corporate systems. Low-impact housing, Cob homes, straw bale builds, yurts and tiny houses show that autonomy can be constructed from below, often with salvaged or upcycled materials. Each of these practices chips away at dependency, proving that survival is possible without being plugged into corporate grids. Towards resilient autonomy. Ultimately, building autonomy in hostile systems requires plural strategies, combining digital experiments with low-tech self-reliance, defensive tactics with constructive projects. It means designing practices that can survive repression, adapt to surveillance and regenerate even after crackdowns. As earlier sections warned, obstacles are inevitable: burnout, repression, internal conflict, but resilience lies in multiplicity. No single tactic guarantees autonomy, but a culture of adaptability, redundancy and creativity can sustain communities even under the most hostile conditions. The point is not to imagine autonomy as a fortress, sealed from the world, but as a shifting ecology. Networks of resistance and cooperation that adapt and endure. This resilience, grounded in both high and low tech tools, echoes Colin Ward's metaphor of anarchism as a seed beneath the snow. Even under hostile conditions, seeds persist, and given space, they will grow.